One of the greatest traps we fall into, often without even realizing it, is the comparison trap. It's subtle, it's everywhere, and it's incredibly damaging. We don't consciously wake up one day and decide, I'm going to measure my life against someone else's. No. It creeps in. You see a friend's success post, a colleague's promotion, someone else's relationship milestones, and suddenly your mind begins constructing this quiet narrative: I'm behind, I'm not enough, I should be further along. This, right here, is where you start to lose yourself. The problem with comparison is that it convinces you to abandon your own lane. It shifts your focus from internal growth to external validation. You start chasing someone else's timeline, goals, values, even lifestyle, without ever pausing to ask, is this even aligned with who I want to be? And here's the psychological kicker. When we compare, we usually compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, their polished exterior, their carefully curated success story, but we know our own flaws intimately. We see our doubts, our struggles, our insecurities. So the comparison isn't just unfair, it's distorted from the start. This isn't just a confidence issue, it's an identity issue. Because when you constantly measure yourself against others, you allow their progress to dictate your self-worth. You let their approval, or even their existence, govern your peace of mind. And that's a dangerous game, because the moment you give away control of your self-worth, you become a prisoner of perception. Every post, every glance, every achievement around you feels like a threat rather than inspiration. It becomes a race you never agreed to run, on a track that was never yours to begin with. Now let's dig a little deeper. At its core, comparison stems from fear of not being good enough, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. But fear, when not understood, becomes the lens through which you see the world. And when fear drives your focus, you begin living reactively rather than intentionally. You don't wake up and say, what can I build today? Instead, you wake up and say, what am I missing that someone else already has? That mindset right there, that's the beginning of paralysis. It keeps you observing instead of creating, judging instead of growing. Here's the philosophical shift: your life is not meant to be validated, it's meant to be lived. Your path is not a performance for others to applaud. It's a practice of becoming who you were designed to be. The moment you stop trying to keep up, you finally start catching up with yourself. And yes, I get it. Focusing solely on yourself in a hyper-connected world sounds like a contradiction. But there's nothing selfish about self-alignment. In fact, it's one of the most responsible things you can do. Because when you focus on yourself, on your healing, your habits, your mindset, you elevate every room you walk into. You stop projecting your insecurities onto others. You stop competing for attention. You start operating from wholeness, not scarcity. This shift requires intentionality. You have to get real honest with yourself. What triggers your comparison? What environments feed that insecurity? What voices, whether online or offline, make you question your value? Start pruning those. Start cultivating silence, solitude, and self-examination. Because in the stillness, you find clarity. And in clarity, you reclaim control. One of the things I always tell people is this: your metrics of success have to come from within. They cannot be borrowed, bought, or begged for. They need to reflect your values, your calling, your truth. Otherwise, you'll keep chasing moving goalposts, accomplishments that feel empty when you get there, applause that fades before you even leave the stage. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and said, I'm proud of how far I've come, without needing someone else to validate it? That's not arrogance. That's ownership. That's knowing your worth without a measuring stick. That's the kind of confidence that doesn't shout. It simply stands. See, when you stop looking sideways, you start looking inward. You begin noticing the small wins. You start listening to your intuition. You learn to trust your process, even when it looks different than everyone else's. And slowly, you realize something profound. You were never behind. You were just distracted. And that's the truth, isn't it? Distraction is the real enemy. Not failure, not delay, not imperfection. Distraction from your purpose, from your principles, from your path. Every time you compare, you abandon the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one you have with yourself. Let me leave you with this. You don't owe the world a performance, you owe yourself your potential. And when you finally stop chasing their journey, you'll discover the power in walking your own. Focus on that. Let everything else fade. You know what most people don't realize? You can be physically present, but mentally drained, completely depleted, because your focus is scattered across things that don't even belong to you. Conversations, opinions, people's moods, the need to explain, to justify, to prove, to win over. That's not awareness, that's exhaustion. And it all comes down to one thing: unprotected energy. Let's get something clear. Your focus is your currency. It's how you buy back your peace, your progress, your presence. But if you're constantly focused on others, what they think, what they expect, what they do, you've handed over your currency to people who are not even invested in your well-being. And the result? You're broke. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We often think of boundaries as something we put between ourselves and the world, something external. But the most powerful boundaries you'll ever create are the ones that exist within. Internal boundaries, the quiet decisions you make about what you allow to influence you, what you let into your mental space, who you give emotional access to. Because here's the truth: not everyone should have access to your mind. Not everyone earns a seat at your table of attention. There's a psychological concept that's relevant here: cognitive load. Your brain can only process so much information at one time. Every time you shift your attention to what someone said about you, how they looked at you, why they didn't text back, why they succeeded and you didn't, you're adding to that load. And before you know it, your capacity for focus is maxed out. Not because you're not smart or capable, but because you've allowed too much nonsense to take up bandwidth. Think about how often your mind drifts toward people who don't matter in the long run. Someone who misunderstood you, someone who wronged you, someone who didn't believe in you, and you carry that with you into your work, your relationships, your self-worth. You build internal dialogues around people who probably aren't even thinking about you, and that's not your fault. That's programming. That's the human desire to feel seen, heard, understood. But it's time to reprogram that. The key is to learn emotional detachment, not in a cold, apathetic way, but in a wise, measured, self-preserving way. Detachment means you stop tying your peace to someone else's behavior. You stop outsourcing your confidence to other people's validation. You stop reacting to everything. Because the more reactive you are, the less in control you become. And control, inner control, is where personal power lives. Let's talk about what this looks like in real life. Someone criticizes you unfairly. Your first impulse might be to defend, to explain, to fight back. But what if you didn't? What if you just observed, took a breath, realized that what they're projecting has everything to do with them and almost nothing to do with you? That's emotional maturity. That's a boundary. And it saves you, not just from them, but from yourself. Or let's say you're scrolling and you see someone living a version of life you want. You start feeling behind, less than, anxious. Instead of spiraling, what if you paused and asked, why is this triggering me? Maybe it's not about them at all. Maybe it's showing you where your own needs have gone unmet. And now, instead of judging or comparing, you've just been given a window into your growth. That's a boundary too. A boundary between reaction and reflection. There's a deep philosophical truth in all this. You cannot control the world, but you can govern yourself. That is what inner boundaries allow you to do. Govern your energy, govern your attention, govern your focus. And once you start doing that, everything changes. You're no longer pulled by the tides of people's opinions, or the pressure to perform, or the fear of being misunderstood. You become anchored, steady, quietly powerful. And let me tell you something, not everyone will like this version of you. The version that doesn't flinch, that doesn't explain, that doesn't chase or perform. But that's okay. Your job is not to be understood by everyone. Your job is to be in alignment with yourself. Some people won't recognize you once you stop being emotionally available to their chaos. That's part of the process. Here's where this gets transformative. When you build strong internal boundaries, you start creating space for thinking, for creativity, for healing, for truth, and most of all, space for growth. Because when you stop absorbing everyone else's noise, you finally hear your own voice. The one that's been drowned out for years under the weight of people, pleasing, perfectionism, and performance. That voice, that still, clear voice inside you, is your compass. And when you're guided by it, Instead of being yanked around by the expectations of others, your decisions become rooted, not rushed, not reactive, rooted. You start showing up with intention, with strength, with calm. You stop proving and start being. That's what it means to truly focus on yourself, not in some shallow surface level way, but in a way that's strategic, spiritual, and deeply self-respecting. You're not cutting people off, you're cutting distractions off. You're not isolating, you're calibrating. You're not being selfish, you're finally being selective. So let me leave you with this: your peace is not up for negotiation. Your focus is not a community resource, and your energy is not an unlimited gift to be handed out freely. Protect it, direct it. Let's talk about something that doesn't get the attention it deserves in a world obsessed with shortcuts and overnight success: self-discipline. Now, I know, discipline doesn't sound flashy, it's not loud, it doesn't always trend. But here's the truth: real confidence, the kind that doesn't waver when life hits, is built on discipline. Not motivation, not hype, not applause, discipline. See, when you focus on yourself, not to the exclusion of others, but to the cultivation of your own foundation, something powerful happens. You stop watching, you stop wishing, and you start working quietly, consistently. And over time, that inner work becomes your outer strength. It becomes your presence, your calm, your clarity. And the wild thing is, people will notice. They won't always know what changed, but they'll feel it. You'll carry yourself differently, not because you think you're better than anyone else, but because you know you've shown up for yourself every single day. And that kind of confidence, that doesn't come from likes, followers, or praise. That comes from doing the work when nobody's watching. There's this psychological idea called self-efficacy. Your belief in your ability to execute tasks and handle challenges. You don't build self-efficacy by reading about discipline. You build it by showing up day in and day out, regardless of how you feel. You make your bed, you do the workout, you finish the book, you have the hard conversation, you stick to your goals when it would be easier to abandon them. Every time you do that, your brain gets the message: I can trust myself. And that trust, that's gold. Because when the world shakes, and it will, you won't be scrambling for confidence, you'll already have it. But let me make something clear: self-discipline isn't about rigidity. It's not about punishing yourself. It's not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about choosing long-term peace over short-term pleasure. It's about honoring your values even when your emotions try to negotiate you out of them. Because emotions lie sometimes. They say, take it easy. Skip today. You've earned it. And while rest is essential, there's a difference between rest and escape. Discipline teaches you the difference. And yes, discipline is uncomfortable. That's the point. Growth is supposed to be uncomfortable. That's how you know it's working. If it were easy, everyone would be walking around fulfilled, focused, and fearless. But most people don't want to face the quiet moments, the grind, the repetition. They want results without resistance. But there's a reason the gym has mirrors, because you have to face yourself while you work. Same goes for life. There's also something deeply philosophical about discipline. It's an act of self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, you're declaring to the world, I matter. And the more you keep those promises, the more your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That's not ego, that's integrity. That's the kind of transformation that lasts, because it's internal. And what's built internally can't be taken away by anyone externally. And this is where it connects back to focusing on yourself. Because while everyone else is chasing validation, chasing comparison, chasing distraction, you're building, you're laying bricks, you're showing up. And over time, that compounding effort, it builds a foundation so solid, people will think you got lucky. But luck is when discipline meets time. You have to understand, in a distracted world, focus itself is a superpower, and discipline is the tool that sharpens that focus. It keeps you moving when motivation fades. It reminds you that your future isn't built in loud, explosive moments. It's built in the quiet, ordinary ones, the early mornings, the late nights, the saying no to what tempts you and yes to what grows you. And look, no one is born with perfect discipline. It's a muscle. It has to be trained. You will mess up. You will backslide. But what matters is how quickly you return to center, how fast you recalibrate. Discipline isn't about never slipping, it's about never quitting. You fall forward, you learn, you adapt, and you keep going. But here's the part most people miss: self-discipline is freedom. It's not a prison. It doesn't restrict you. It releases you. It frees you from regret, from second guessing, from the chaos that comes with living reactively. When you live with discipline, you make your choices ahead of time. You live proactively. That's how you take your power back. So, while others are waiting for the perfect moment, for the right mood, for someone to tell them what to do, you're already in motion. You're already locked in. That's what makes the difference. That's what separates those who wish from those who become. And you know what's amazing? The more disciplined you become, the less distracted you are by other people's paths. You stop watching, you stop measuring, you realize their success doesn't take away from yours. You're too busy building, too focused on your own growth to worry about what's happening across the street. And that's when life gets quiet, but powerful. You'll find yourself surrounded by fewer people, but deeper peace, fewer highs and lows, but stronger ground. Because when discipline becomes your lifestyle, stability becomes your reward. So I'll end with this: the most powerful thing you can do for your future is to consistently show up for yourself today, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because the version of you that's waiting on the other side of discipline, they're already cheering you on. There comes a point where you have to realize not every distraction is a bad thing in disguise. Some are simply distractions, beautifully packaged, convincingly urgent, and wildly seductive. They come wrapped in validation, in ego, in opportunity, but deep down, they pull you off course. And if you're not anchored in your purpose, you'll chase everything but what you're here to do. That's the danger. When you don't know what your purpose is, or when you're loosely connected to it, it's easy to give your energy away to whatever's loudest. You respond to everything. You react to everyone. And slowly, without even noticing, your days start filling up with other people's priorities, their expectations, their noise. You begin living a life that looks full but feels empty, busy but aimless, productive but unfulfilled. Your purpose isn't a distant goal or a grand achievement. It's not something you find at the top of a mountain or in the applause of a crowd. It's something deeper, quieter, more internal. It's the thing that, when you align with it, makes everything else make sense. It guides your yes. It sharpens your no. It brings clarity to the chaos. And when you lock into it, really lock in, it changes the way you move through the world. You stop needing permission to be who you are. You stop chasing trends. You stop being swayed by other people's pace. But here's what most people don't want to accept: purpose demands sacrifice. It asks you to let go of comfort. It forces you to sit with yourself, ask the hard questions, and often walk away from the very things distracting you from becoming who you're meant to be. That might mean less attention, less approval, fewer familiar faces, and if you're not grounded, you'll interpret that loss as failure. But it's not failure, it's focus. There's a psychological shift that happens when you commit to your purpose. You begin to operate from a different frequency, not higher or better, just different. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, your circle. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't even committed to understanding themselves. You stop negotiating your identity in exchange for temporary belonging, and instead you invest in depth, in substance, in growth. You'll know you're walking in purpose when peace becomes more important than popularity, when solitude becomes more nourishing than constant connection, when progress isn't always public but it's deeply personal. You'll feel it, and the wild part is, some people around you won't. They won't get it, because you're no longer playing the same game. You're not chasing moments. You're building something sustainable, something eternal. But this kind of purpose-driven living requires discipline, clarity, and self-trust. You have to be able to say, "This is for me," even when it doesn't look glamorous yet. You have to be okay with people not clapping, not liking, not understanding, and still stay the course. That's maturity. That's leadership. That's legacy-building work. See, there's a reason the most impactful people in the world aren't the loudest. They're not constantly promoting themselves, defending themselves, or reacting to every comment. Why? Because they're busy, focused, rooted. They've realized their energy is too expensive to waste on things that don't move their mission forward. And they're not arrogant, they're aligned. They're not ignoring others, they're honoring their calling. You can't let the noise pull you out of alignment. And the noise isn't always external. Sometimes it's internal, the voice of self-doubt, of fear, of unworthiness. That voice gets loud when you're getting close to something meaningful. Because your ego knows real growth means change. Real purpose means discomfort. It means letting go of identities that kept you safe, but also kept you small. You have to be willing to outgrow your own story. The story that says, I have to be liked to be worthy. The story that says, if I don't say yes, they'll leave. The story that says, maybe I'm just not good enough. Those stories, they're not true. They're rehearsed. They've been playing in your mind for years, maybe decades, and now it's time to challenge them, replace them, rewrite them, because your purpose is too big to be derailed by outdated narratives. That's why focus is so sacred. It's not just about time management, it's about soul management. It's about managing what gets your attention, what earns your presence, what deserves a place in your mind. Because the quality of your life is directly connected to the quality of your focus. Where your focus goes, your life follows. So take inventory. Who or what is stealing your focus right now? What conversations leave you drained? What habits pull you away from your potential? What people benefit from your distraction more than your growth? Those questions aren't comfortable, but they're necessary, because clarity starts with honesty. And when you find that clarity, when you reconnect with your deeper why, you stop moving frantically and start moving faithfully. You trust your timing, you honor your rhythm, you protect your progress. And over time, your life becomes a reflection of something more than survival or success. It becomes a reflection of stewardship, of purpose lived out loud, on purpose. So what do you do with all this? You stop letting the world set your pace. You stop giving away your focus like it's free. You slow down long enough to hear yourself again. And then you recommit, not to perfection, not to hustle, but to purpose. Your purpose is not a trend. It's a responsibility. Guard it. Grow it.